Welcome to Global World Watch. Please subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. It began not with a bang, but with a chilling announcement. On a Monday morning, the government declared all contracts with Chinese state-owned enterprises null and void, effective immediately. The move was hailed as a patriotic triumph until the consequences hit. Overnight, the nation's energy supply, almost entirely managed by Chinese entities, was severed. Gasoline and diesel prices tripled by nightfall, paralyzing the economy. There was no backup plan, no emergency reserves, no alternative suppliers. The government had simply turned off the tap, assuming the global market would fill the void. It didn't. Gas stations ran dry, lines stretched for miles, and tempers flared. The government's reassurances rang hollow as the nation ground to a halt. The promise of sovereignty felt distant compared to the reality of an economy in freefall. The crisis was just beginning, and its true cost was yet to be counted. This was the opening chapter of a national tragedy, written by political ambition and paid for by the public. To grasp the disaster's scale, you must understand how deeply China was embedded in the nation's economy. For decades, Chinese investment built the country's oil refineries, ports, and shipping fleets, controlling the entire energy supply chain. Chinese banks financed infrastructure and provided the credit lines that kept energy prices stable. Cutting China out wasn't just ending a contract, it was removing the nation's economic lifeblood. Suddenly, the country had to find billions in hard currency to buy oil on the open market, without China's financial safety net. The government underestimated this dependency, mistaking a web of partnerships for simple business deals. The result? A free-falling economy stripped of its foundation. The nation had traded unprecedented development for profound vulnerability. When the government severed ties, it dismantled the very system that powered its modern economy. The consequences would be swift and severe. The government's drastic move was driven by mounting political pressure and fears over national security. Leaders argued that China's control over critical infrastructure was an existential threat, amplified by Western allies urging a pivot away from Beijing. The promised trade economic pain for a stronger security alliance with the West. Nationalist sentiment surged, with politicians framing the expulsion as reclaiming sovereignty. But warnings from economists about the lack of a backup plan were dismissed as fear-mongering. The decision was more about political theatre than careful planning. The government gambled the nation's economy on ideology, not strategy. The dice were loaded from the start. The oil shock triggered a cascade of collapse. Transportation froze as truckers and buses ran out of fuel. Supermarket shelves emptied within days. Inflation soared. Bread that cost $1 on Monday cost $5 by Friday. Price controls backfired, fueling a black market and deepening shortages. The crisis quickly became humanitarian. Families couldn't afford food, hospitals lost power, schools closed. Protests erupted, turning into riots as anger replaced patriotism. Rural farmers faced ruin, unable to fuel tractors or transport crops. The nation was united only by shared misery. Small businesses shuttered, the economy seized up, and daily life unraveled. The government's grand strategy had led to complete societal breakdown. The promise of security now felt like a cruel joke. The nation was not stronger, it was on its knees. The social fabric was torn beyond recognition. Amid the chaos, a fierce debate raged. The government called the crisis a necessary sacrifice for sovereignty, urging citizens to endure for the nation's future. Nationalist media painted critics as unpatriotic, insisting the pain was worth the price of freedom. Critics, however, condemned the move as catastrophic mismanagement. They argued that a responsible government would have diversified suppliers and secured alternatives before such a drastic step. The lack of a transition plan was seen as reckless, not brave. Investors lost faith, warning that the country's reputation was in tatters. The real debate, not patriotism versus treason, but competence versus incompetence. As the shock faded, a deeper crisis set in. Chronic inflation became the new normal, eroding wages and destroying savings. The middle class was hollowed out, poverty soared, and foreign investment vanished. The country was now seen as unstable and unreliable. Capital flight accelerated, and the currency collapsed. Hopes of attracting new partners to replace China evaporated. The nation became dependent on the volatile spot market for energy, with no long-term contracts or price stability. Any global disruption now threatened immediate disaster. Social and political divisions deepened. Trust in government shattered. The expulsion, meant to strengthen the nation, had fractured its society and left it more vulnerable than ever. The scars of this decision would last for generations. Now the nation faces painful choices. Reconciliation with China could stabilize the economy, but at the cost of political humiliation and harsher terms. Doubling down on new partners means a slow, uncertain recovery, with wary allies and no guarantees. Failure to secure either path risks permanent instability and possible state collapse. The crisis is a stark warning. Major geopolitical decisions have real-world consequences. In today's world, security and economic stability are inseparable. Severing deep economic ties is a dangerous operation, demanding meticulous planning and realistic expectations. The central lesson sovereignty must be balanced with stability. Get it wrong, and a nation can be brought to its knees. The world is watching and learning.